Hello, everyone. Today I am sharing with you how I plan my year. Happy Friday, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving. I hope that everyone had an amazing Thanksgiving. I am exhausted and I am hurting in places that only a 48-year-old would understand. Okay. We hosted Thanksgiving at my house yesterday, and I feel like I was cooking for 7 days and 7 nights. I was prepping, I was chopping, I was roasting, I was baking, I was mixing, I was mashing, I was basting, I was buttering. There was a lot going on, but ultimately it was a success, and we got rave reviews on all of the food from 4 generations, okay? And so that's how my Thanksgiving was, and today has been spent moving slowly and with intention because I hurt everywhere. Okay. If you're new here, let me introduce myself. If you're new here, if you're true here, hi, I'm Roshini Cope. I am a content creator. I am a special needs mom, and I am a certified life coach. I help Black women change their lives. Okay. And speaking about being intentional and changing your life, today we are changing our lives by intentionally learning how to plan our year. This is one of my favorite topics. This is one of my favorite things to coach people on. This is something that I have done for so many years. I don't even know how many, over a decade. And it has changed my life and continues to change my life. And this is a way that I help coaching clients change their lives. I am live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. I try to go live on Facebook, but the technology is not technologying. So I dropped the link on Facebook, and hopefully people on Facebook can see me. But unfortunately, if you want me to see your comments, you're going to have to go to YouTube. I don't know if LinkedIn comments show over here. They might, but you're going to have to go to YouTube if you want me to see your comments. Okay. So today we are sharing how I plan my year with intention, and just like an overview of it intent. And actually, it's going to be a little bit like I'm not gonna say it's a workshop because I'm not gonna like plan my year in front of you. I'm gonna actually do that in a couple of weeks, but I'm going to go over step by step how I plan my year so that you can, if you want to, you can just use my methodology and you can create a much more intentional year that feels like success to you and not just be flapping in the wind. Amen. Amen. Okay, let's do it. So let's talk about first, let me share how I even got to this. Several years ago, I started doing these solo self care staycations where I would book a hotel room and go and stay in a hotel. You typically for a couple nights because that was really what I needed. If I only did one night, I didn't feel rested when I came out. So I would book a hotel and just go. And there was no intention in going besides just respite, taking a break, stopping everything. I've been doing this so long that I remember the first few times I went, I would take a radio with me with a cassette and a CD player that I still have. It's up there in the closet. And I would take old sermons, CDs, and sermon cassettes and music CDs with me to play in the room. I would take a book or two, and I would often take my laptop too, just to have it and maybe spend some time clearing out my email, right? There was no rhyme or reason. I would go in, I would rest, and I would listen to sermons. I would listen to music. I would listen to books. No, I wouldn't listen to, I would read books back then because I wasn't listening to books back then. There weren't podcasts that I knew of back then, 10, 15 years ago. And I would rest and I would come out of the hotel room reset, right? So it was all about resetting and resting myself. Over the years, I started to clearly learn what I enjoyed on my solo self care staycations. And honestly, I think I did a video last year or the year before about tips for your own solo self care staycations. So when I'm finished, I will come back and drop that link to that video in the comment section and or the information section of whatever platform you're watching on, including Facebook. I'll put it over there too. Because as you do the thing, you start to learn what works for you, right? So over the years, my hotel stays, started to become more common, and that meant that I learned a lot about what worked for me. And I realized that one of the things I enjoyed doing was to book a hotel stay like that, a couple nights in a hotel at the beginning of the year, so in January, and use that specific hotel stay to plan my year, okay? To plan my plan to take over the world. And so I would take my laptop. I started to learn, what food I wanted to do, what kind of hotel room I actually preferred. I started to learn, oh, hey, Judy. And yeah, okay, LinkedIn comments do show over here. I think I knew that, but I wasn't 100% sure. So thank you for commenting. So I started to basically figure myself out and what worked, right? I started to learn like what I wanted to have, whether I wanted to go get food, whether I wanted to have activities. There was a season where I used to invite friends to come to the hotel with me. And I just started to learn that a couple of these a year really did the body and the mind good. And the one in January was the one that I would use to plan my year. So then after that iteration, I started to realize after planning my year after year after year, which things worked for me and which things got the best results for me and which things didn't work for me that well when it came to planning my year. And so I kind of put together my own planning retreat that I did every single year like clockwork. Um, Booked a hotel for 2 nights, went to a hotel. I prefer the ones that have the small kitchens. Um, did the do the way I like to do it, did the exercises the way I like to do it, and would come out of that hotel room with a plan to execute for that year. That's my story of how I started doing this. In 2020, I did what I always do, which is booked a hotel room, went and was doing my planning retreat for myself, by myself. And I had a one on one coaching call with a client. And during that coaching call, she mentioned to me that she would love to do a planning retreat with me. And of course, this was pre pandemic because it was still 2020. And I remember being in the hotel room and being like, I'm not really sure how I would do that because I thought she meant like in person. I don't remember if she meant in person or virtual. I can't remember because time of the social construct and the pandemic kind of messed up. The pandemic messed up our thought processes. But I remember back then thinking she meant invite people to come to a physical place and do this retreat with me. And I was just like, I don't. And that was all I did. Of course, 3, 4 months later, the entire planet has shut down, right? And everything became hyper virtual. And so by the time my next planning retreat came around in 2021, I realized that I was going to do it myself. Her comment popped up in my brain, and I was like, let me invite some women to do this with me. So I just threw it out there into the atmosphere, the old internet. And I believe I had 50 women do my virtual planning retreat, my planning retreat with me virtually, because it was not virtual before. I had 50 women jump on a platform that doesn't even exist anymore and do my planning retreat with me virtually. Right. Hey, Lori. Hello, Lori. Thank you for my pineapple. So, that, you guys, is the origin of how I plan my year and where like all of this is coming from that I'm about to share with you. So, if you're a person either watching this live or on the replay, if you're watching it live, drop a pineapple in the chat. Tell me where you're watching from. I would love to know. And if you are, and tell me how your Thanksgiving was. I'm interested. Okay. I am moving slow because like I said, I'm achy and I cooked so much food and I stood and cooked forever, and I don't like. Listen, I put a foot in that food though. Um, my my mother-in-law and my husband's grandmother was like, "Girl, I think you put some toes in there too." They was like, "Girl," they was kicking their feet. So it was all worth it, but I am exhausted and achy. Okay, tell me how that went in the comments. So anyway, that's how I got to how I plan my year out. And if I'm being honest, doing this every year for the past like decade and a half has slowly been shifting the trajectory of my life. You're like, why slowly, Rushni? It's been slowly because I got a kid with special needs. So it can't be as abrupt as it could be. However, if you do these things and you want to make quick, you know, more vigorous moves than I'm able to do by all means. So if you are a person that gets a notebook, especially if you're watching a replay, watching live, and you want to jot this down, you can use this in the month of December to go ahead and plan your year as well. Oh, the other thing I like to say is when I started doing it in the pandemic, I was doing it virtually for the first time and like helping other women walk through these things that were developed just for my own personal use. And I started to realize that I actually prefer doing this now in December. So I like doing it the year before the year starts so that when the year starts, I could just go. But it's, you could do this whenever. You could, whenever you're watching this video, whether you're watching it in December, uh, February, March, June. If you're alive and breathing and you want to have more intention, then these are the steps that I use. And by all means, feel free to use your steps. Hi, Katrina. Hi, Boo Boo. Hi. Hello. Thanks for my pineapple, Judy. Thank you. Okay. Step number one for how I plan my year with intention, right? Meaning on purpose. On purpose. First thing, write this down. I look back at it. Which means I reflect on what happened in the previous year. So every single year when I sit down to do my plan for the next year, so like I'm going to do a plan for the next year. A couple weeks from now, I'm about to sit down and do a plan for the next year. I look back at 2024 and see what 2024 was doing. See what 2024 was doing to me. Great fun yesterday with people I love. That is amazing. I'm so happy for you. Right? So, what that looks like for me is I pull out my journal, I pull out my calendar. If you have a paper calendar, I would pull that out. Mine is digital. I pull out my completed task list. I pull out anything that shows me what last year was like. I have paper calendars, so I will grab those. And I make like I start making a list. I don't start the list yet, but I pull out things that would tell me what last year was like. Sermon notes and notes from conferences I went to. Anything that I was jotting down, writing down, taking note of, if I have videos, I might pull up last year's worth of videos. If I were a vlogger, I would probably go back and watch my vlogs, right? So anything I could do to review my year and look back on it and reflect, right? So that's the first thing I do. I pull these things up every single year and I look back at the year that existed and what I created last year. Now, since I've been doing this planner retreat on my own, you guys, it has become a little bit more structured. The first time I did it, and it kind of grew organically, but now that I do the same thing every year, it's become very structured. So, um, for example, if you're a person that had, notes written in 7 notebooks and your sermon notes are in 3 different things and scribbled in the corner of your Bible and you got kind of have a calendar you started over there, but then you start a journal, like, you have 8,000 things. When you go to look back at your year, you're going to realize that you probably didn't get anything done because you're a pot of confusion. You're operating out of confusion and you're going to start streamlining your things because you're going to realize, well, at least I started to realize that every year I want to review my stuff. Every year I want to review my things and I don't want to be frustrated in reviewing my year. So I started becoming much more streamlined. I keep one journal. I know exactly where it is. I keep one calendar. Well, that's not true. I have a visual calendar in front of me because it just helps me. But I have my digital calendar is my actual calendar. So I don't have 8,000 things all over the place because I know at the end of the year when I do my planning retreat, I don't have time to be a pot of confusion. So that's one of the things that you learn when you're doing this when I've been doing this work over and over every year, I review. The next thing I do after I have all of that stuff that kind of gives me an idea of what the year was like that I could review is I figure out what the patterns were, right? And you could use whatever way you want to figure out the patterns. But the important part is after I review all those things, I'm looking for patterns and I actually document the patterns that I see. So it could be something as simple as making a list that says positive things and negative things. Like you put positive and negative at the top of a piece of paper, and then you go through your journal and your calendar and whatever else you're using and write down the people, places, things, and activities that you deemed were positive in 2024 and the people, places, things, and activities that you deem were negative, right? That's an example. You could put where I grew, growth, shrunk at the top of a page. And you could do the same thing. Write down the people, places, things, activities where you feel like you grew in 2024, and then write down the ones that feel like shrunk you. You could put where you felt free and where you felt like constrained at the top of a page, right? Basically, you want some opposites, right? You want some opposing things, and you write down the things and times and people and activities and events and places and things that where you felt free and liberated. And then on the other side, you write down. So when you're done with that, or when I'm done with my review and how I look at it, whatever I decide, I have a visual representation of patterns of the previous or the year that I'm in if I'm doing it in December, the previous year if I'm doing it in January. And hopefully that makes sense because I'm trying to get it out of my head where there's no structure, right? Thoughts are not very structured. Most of us are not taught to structure thought. Um, Learning how to structure thought is big girl and big boy behavior. And even then, we don't really have any communal ways of structuring thought. We're all just kind of, you know, raw dogging it inside of our own heads with disparate words and phrases. But when you write things down, they become much more concrete. Okay, you take it out. We've all learned alphabet. We've all learned sentences. We've all learned paragraphs. We've all learned bullet point lists. There's a structured way to take it out of your head and have it be like this and take it out from being sparkles and have it be beams. Okay, so once I have assessment of the patterns, however I choose, I kind of look over that to get an idea of what the themes and patterns are in the past year, right? If it's the first time you're doing this, you're going to be for the first time presented with themes and patterns that you probably never noticed, right? Some human being, if you do all those lists I told you, and I'm not saying you have to do those, but those are examples. I promise you, there's going to be some human being on there that's on the negative list that shrunk you and you felt constrained about them, that you never really thought it for real. Like you never let yourself think it, but when you write it on the paper, it's right there in front of your face that Pookie is sucking the living daylights out of you, okay? Or a job, or a place, or a home, or a, right? And same thing, you're going to realize that there are things that are on the positive, joy, happiness, expansive, liberating feeling side of it. And you're going to start noticing the patterns. So I look for the patterns and I make notes of the patterns that I'm seeing. That could be on another piece of paper, writing down Pookie's horrible. I got to get rid of Pookie. This house I bought is the most beautiful thing. Every place that made me feel amazing is sunny and warm, or whatever the patterns are, right? So that's the thing I do. The next thing that I do is because I do this every year, I look back at what I wanted to do last year and I celebrate if there were things in the patterns that were mostly positive, mostly joy filled, mostly liberating, that were things I intended to create the previous year that I actually created, things where I felt free and liberated and authentic to myself. I actually think of a way, big or small, to celebrate the fact that I'm moving in the direction that I want to and I'm creating the life that I want to. Yes, Katrina, we're gonna look at the patterns. We're gonna see what we actually did. And then we're going to notice where the light is. Everything has a light and a dark side in my mind. We're going to notice where the light is. We're going to notice where the positive is. We're going to notice where we were authentic. We're going to notice where we are, like Katrina say here, grateful. We're going to notice where we felt free and liberated, right? And we're going to now use that information to create the rest of our plan. Okay, so the next thing that I do after I look back at it and I reflect on my previous year, I start doing self-assessment, right? It's about authenticity and learning myself. Who am I? If you've ever coached with me, you know that I am a stickler for identity work. Identity is answering the question, who am I? Right? And there are endless places where you can answer that question. But for simplicity, I look at different categories of my character traits. I don't mean a role. Okay, a role is reflective identity. It's how people see you in their life and the role you play. And those things are important. Reflective identity is important because we are not built to be here by ourselves. But this planning retreat is not about optimizing your reflective identity for other people. I am not here to tell you to create an entire year's plan based off of how you show up for other people. You are not a tool, you're a person. And I like my clients, as well as myself, to create plans that come up from inside and are authentic about you, right? So I am big on answering the question of who I am. And that is character traits. So, what are your values? Meaning, what do you give worth to in your life? What are your strengths? What are your challenges or weaknesses? What are you actually interested in? Yeah. Who are you? What are you grateful for? Like there's so many different things. And so I actually sit down every year and review because I've done this before, but if I was doing it for the first time, I would actually just establish this. I would sit down and ask myself questions that establish who I am, what my values are. What am I interested in? What feels like liberty to me? What feels like safety to me? What feels like authenticity to me? And the list that I made prior would tell me, oh, I'm clicking on stuff. Oh, actually, there you go. Judy said you better say it. I believe I will. Thank you very much, Judy. I'm saying it right now. You got to make a plan based on you, boo boo. I could go down the rabbit hole of that, but just it's time out for Black women being trained to be tools in other people's lives. I'm not saying be an individual to the point of stranding yourself on an island. Community is key, but I want you to show up as a whole version of you in your community. And if you don't know who you are, and you don't, if the use of a tool is unclear, abuse is inevitable. Let me sip on that. If I don't know what this hammer is for, I'm gonna put it down and use it as a doorstop. I don't know what this is. Anyway, so if you are unclear of who you are, other people, places, things, and activities are gonna misuse you. And you're not gonna know to tell them to stop. Anyway, let me get off. That's not the point. I'm trying to get y'all to the plan. I'm not preaching. Okay. So figure out who you are. Guess what? If you don't know who you are and you've never done identity work with me or in your life, whatever platform you're on, go in the information box. You can download my free Who Am I Identity Workbook. This is the framework that I use to review, because I've done this before, or establish if you've never done it, beginning to answer the question of who you are. You may be living somebody else's whole life. And there is no shame in that, because so many of us in these systems have been trained, honed, taught, and celebrated for making ourselves a cog in the system. Okay. I'm off that. I'm not doing that. So, of course, I'm not going to plan a year based off of that. I'm going to plan a year based off of me. So, the first thing I do is I look back at it. I look back at my year and I reflect. The second thing I do is I learn myself. I assess myself. I establish where I am, right? Who I am. Another thing that's a little bit more advanced, and I've started doing this recently. I haven't said it a lot, but I'm going to start saying it now. I don't only identify who I am, I identify who I'm becoming and who I want to create. Because I really believe that we have creative power and we can decide, even if we weren't a person that XYZs, that we want to become a person that XYZs, and we can put that into our plan and create her. So like I start to decide who I want. I figure out who I am and I jot these things down, because I already talked to you about having things bouncing around in your head versus putting them down and pinning them down so you can see them and so that your brain can process them in a structured way, right? That's important. But then I also like to decide who I want to be and create her, become her. Yeah? Okay. So that's the thing that I do. And then I when I have that self-assessment and I've spent intentional time saying, was I who I wanted to be last year? Who do I want to be in 2025? Who am I? What do I value? What am I interested in? What are my strengths? When do I feel authentic? When am I joyous? When am I grateful? And like being brutally honest about those things cuz we too old. Let me say this y'all and then I'm going to get back. The people that watch my videos, we too old to be living somebody else's life, okay? I can see the analytics. This thing does end. Sorry. Y'all, this thing does end. People does just die. People just die. We're too old. I can see the analytics. So if you've been doing somebody else's thing, stop. Okay. So you want to establish a mission after you have that idea of who you are and you have a better idea of who you might be and you have a kind of an idea of who you want to create. Your mission is what you are purposed to do. So it after that, you're going to kind of have a compass, right? Because now any plan you come up with is going to be anchored on the foundation of who you are and who you are creating. Okay? And all the rest of that stuff is going to be noise, right? All the messaging from unhealed people, unhealed places, unhealed activities, unhealed things, unhealed systems, things that want to use you and abuse you. All that messaging is going to become noise. You're going to start turning down the volume and you're going to turn up the volume on your authentic self, right? Because you've actually sat and did the work, right? Okay. So, and whenever those noises come and they try to redirect you next year because you're planning your year, you're going to reorient yourself with the information that you established when you did your self-assessment and you figured out who you are and you came up with your mission, right? Okay, so let me share my mission. And let me say this. My mission evolves every year. If you have heard me on the internet, you've heard me say my mission over and over and over. And it's always evolving because I am always learning more about who I am and how I want to show up. And so the current mission that I wrote down recently is I am a Black woman healing and changing her life. And I help Black women heal and change their lives. So that's what I do. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I do. So after doing all the self assessments, right, which I haven't done yet, I'm going to do my planner retreat stuff in a couple weeks. I have that time blocked off. That's my mission. So once you have the mission, next step number 3, after I've looked back at it and done all this review. Hey, Blue Isis. Hello. Yes, thank you. I was just telling them that I am tired and achy from cooking forever. I felt like I cooked for forever and a day. I don't want it. I don't. The only solace is the food was amazing. The food was, I mean, it was the best Thanksgiving cooking session. The food, I had 4 generations giggling and kicking their feet up, okay, about the food. So, but I hurt. I'm hurting. Anyway, so look back at it, self-assess. Number 3, then I figure out what is success to me. So I start imagining and dreaming about what success would look like to me. Not what success would look like, period, canned thing that you're told. Okay. Maybe you don't want to buy a house. Maybe you don't want to have a mortgage. Maybe you don't care about Teslas. Maybe you don't want 4 dogs and whatever. Maybe you want to do something else. Maybe you do want all of that. I start dreaming, imagining, activating the neural pathways that allow me to create something out of nothing, which is imagination, right? I just give myself time to process what it could look like. I write down possibilities. I come up with potential people, places, things, types of people, types of activities. I just aspire, right? I just aspire, right? I spend time based off of what I did before that, coming up with a vision using my imagination for what would feel like success in 2025. Part of that is, I mean, I do a lot more granular stuff than this, you guys, but I'm just giving you the overview just in case you want to do this. Part of that is thinking a year from now, what would feel like success to me? A year from now, what would feel like I was 100% Rushni to me? And if 100% isn't doable enough for you, that's scary. What would it feel like if I were 1% more Rushni every single day? Because if I'm 1% more myself every single day, by the end of next year, I'm 300 plus percent more me. Okay. So I envision, I imagine, I dream, and I actually write out. I have different ways that I come up with what success looks like for me in the upcoming year. And, if you're a person that wants to shoot for the stars and make big seismic shifts in your life, then have big seismic dreams and imaginations out there. If you're a person who's living a life like mine that has a child with special needs and you don't feel like you're there to make huge, major seismic shifts, then still dream, but have realistic dreams, but pitch a little higher than you would. Pitch a little higher, right? Because you want to have a plan that feels satisfying and successful. And you could come out of it feeling like, man, I'm changing my life. I'm creating something beautiful. I'm designing the experience of my life that feels more aligned with the divine me, the me that God intended for me to be, right? And so once I do that, and once again, say it with me, I don't just keep it up here in my head because I need to take the unstructured neurological experiences and put it down somewhere. I put it down. I write a story about an imaginary version of what the life's going to look like, or I jot down what success would look like to me, or I jot down what safety feels like to me, or I jot down what, girl, I don't know, joy feels like to me, and love, what in December of 2025 or whatever year I'm planning, a year out, what would feel like success? Okay. So that's the next step that I do. Blue Isis says no bueno on physical pain, but that's pretty awesome that you were able to help. But listen, I am hurting in a way that only a 48-year-old would understand. Okay. A girl, my neck and my back. And my knee and my big toe, because I stubbed my toe yesterday. I was stretching this morning. I'm sorry. Let me come out and come back in. I was stretching this morning and I said, Lord, why is the toe hurting on one foot and the knee on the other foot? Can a sister get a break? Okay. Because I was standing in the kitchen. I have never cut and chopped and butter and basted. Okay. And baked. Oh my. But anyway, it was amazing. But only a 48-year-old will understand what's going on in my body right now. All right. Okay. So we look back at it, we assessed and we learned ourselves, right? We dreamed, we came up with what success looks like based off of who we are, not based off of something else. I don't care what your mama told you. Don't listen. Shake what your mama gave you, but don't do what your mama told you to do with your life because you can be disappointed and miserable. Okay. Do what you want to do with your life and incorporate your mom into it in a healthy way. Okay. So after I've done all those things, the next thing I do to plan my year, you guys, is I come up with my goals and I create a plan. What, Rushni? You don't you don't just come up with goals and a plan at the beginning? No. Where they do that at? Okay. And you know why I don't do that? Because I used to do that kind of like what everybody thinks you're supposed to do. You do your New Year's resolution, and by January 17th, you done quit. You check off 14 things you think you're going to do next year with no premise. No premise. You're just going down a conveyor belt thinking that's what you're supposed to do. I don't know, taking advice, counsel from everybody, okay? Counsel from everybody. These people ain't created nothing remotely close to the life that you want, but you listen to their advice. And you gotta, next year I'm gonna start working out. Next year I'm gonna save to buy a house. Next year I'm gonna whatever, girl. And I kept doing that for years of my life. And I would come through and be miserable and just couldn't figure out why I was miserable because I was doing all the things that I was told. It wasn't until I realized that I was just throwing goals and plans against the wall to see what stuck. And because of that, I was creating a life that wasn't mine. I was creating a life coming from advice from other people, well meaning, I hope, who were miserable in their life and assumed that miserable was what we all have to be. And therefore, the advice they were giving me had nothing to do with joy and gratefulness and imagination and wonder and authenticity and alignment, right? If a person expects life to be, it's kind of like you ever meet a woman who thinks all men cheat? I mean, in her world, all men cheat. There's nothing you can say to her about a man not cheating. If you meet a person who thinks we all just gotta suck it up and be miserable because that's just how life is, and you're taking advice from them, you are not creating a happy life. This person is gonna veer you into the ditch because they're in the ditch. So I started to realize that I had to stop just throwing goals and plans on a piece of paper first. And I had to do the type of work I'm telling you guys before I started the goals and plans because I needed the compass to reorient me back to the me that I wanted to create. Yeah? Okay. So now I'm doing the goals and the plans. Okay. I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. I have a very specific way that I do my goals and my plans. Okay. I do my planning retreat now with my coaching clients and I share that way with them. It evolves. It just like I still change the plan retreat. Like whenever I learn something new or I tweak, the same way I was learning and tweaking it and letting it evolve for myself is what I do with my coaching clients. But the overall gist, so write this down if you need it, is I write down based off of what I just told you, all that stuff, what I want. Yeah. What I'm going to do to get what I want, what I'm going to say yes to and no to, which are the boundaries around what I want, and when I'm going to do it. That's it. What again? I write down what I want. I write down what I'm going to do to get what I want. I write down the boundaries around the thing I want. So what I will do and what I won't do, because a boundary is a border. So it's a yes and a no. It's a will and a won't. Okay. And I write down when I'm going to do it. Now there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's that. Listen, write that down. That alone will help you. Okay. So for example, this year, one of my things I'm doing, this is definitely happening. It has already started, is I am cooking through some cookbooks next year. Next year. Why? Because the way that the election results landed and the way that I wasn't wearing the cape anyway, but I'm definitely, listen, the cape, I ain't seen my cape in a long minute. Okay. I'm going to be what I'm calling minding my own business. MMOB. Okay. And I really encourage every Black woman listening to this to get their own MMOB project and to focus on something that they've been putting to the side and return to yourself. And so one of my main MMOB project is going to be cooking through some cookbooks that I have been meaning to cook through. Okay. I'm sharing this with you as an example. And I'm using this project anytime I have that internal, just because I've healed doesn't mean that sometimes, the thing doesn't call me. Whenever I have any inkling to put on the cape and rescue anybody, I'm going to turn to my MMOB project and focus on that. Okay. And mine is cooking through some cookbooks. So let me give you an example. I am cooking through 3 cookbooks next year. I'm not going to get through all of them. I'm just going to start. Right. And these 3 books are, 2 of them are books I've actually wanted to do this for years and I have been putting it off. And one of them I just bought. So the first one is this older cookbook. You see, listen, look at the coloring. There's a page coming out. I'm not right. This is a cookbook from the 70s that was compiled from church people in the Virgin Islands that I swiped from my mother. Okay. I have been meaning to cook through this book for years. I have made several recipes. It is not a Virgin Islands cookbook. So the recipes are not Virgin Islands recipes per se. Some of them are just your regular recipes. But basically they went around the church and asked all the people to give these recipes and everybody gave these recipes. And now I have a recipe book from the 70s You see the coloring that I am going to cook through. I've actually already started. The first recipe in this book is a cranberry punch that you can make. And I made that punch for Thanksgiving yesterday. Okay. Your girl's already started. All right. So that's one of the things I'm doing. The next one is my very first cookbook when I was a child. The Better Homes and Gardens Junior Cookbook. Okay. This is the cookbook I had as a child, also from the 70s. I thought it was from the 80s, but it says 1979. So apparently we in the 70s, as you can see by the people's pick, them children on the front. Okay. I've made several recipes out of this book when I was a kid, and I just haven't touched it since then. I'm going to make it. Okay. Am I going to be making kids' recipes? Yes. Is it going to bring me joy? Yes. Okay. And the third book that I decided, because I told y'all I'm making all these recipes from the 70s. Okay. And you know, I'm keto, and that's not exactly going to be chocked full of healthy. Okay. Yesterday, that punch told me to put sugar in it, regular sugar. Do y'all know what I had to do to find regular white sugar in my house? I'm talking about the bottom back of the pantry. A scoop, okay, a meager little scoop, like a beggar on the streets. I was like, the little, we don't have, anyway. So I went in with a healthier book. This is Dr. Mindy's. I just got into her. So if she's problematic, just please don't tell me right now, okay? I just want to eat healthy. And this is Eat Like a Girl. She specifically is all about perimenopausal and menopausal women. And she has a book called Fast Like a Girl. I've been really enjoying her YouTube videos, okay? Because I told y'all I'm 48. Okay. So stuff is doing what it's doing. So I decided to pull in a healthier book with some healthier recipes that I'm also going to do. And I'm going to alternate. I'm going to do, I've already started this one. So the next recipe is going to be this book, and then that book. And that, my friends, is my personal MMOB project. I might document it on Instagram with some pictures. Maybe I'll do that. Okay. So that's the work that I'm going to do. So I wrote down work. What am I going to do? This is my goal and my plan, right? I'm writing this down. I'm actually writing this down. For example, I wrote down, I will cook, one recipe from a cookbook each week. That's it. That's the work. That book is 45. Listen, this one is 1979. And this one is earlier than that. It's in the 70s, but listen, you see the pages. Listen, I'm going to do it. And that one I just bought. The Dr. Mindy one I just bought. Will I post it? I'll put it in my Amazon store, bit.ly/ I think it's Glamazini Amazon store. I'll put it in there after this live. Blue says, thanks for asking. Okay. So the work, I write down what I'll do. The work, what I'll do. I write down what I want, which is to cook through these books. I write down the work I'll do. I write down the boundaries around it, and I write down when I'll do it. So in this example, let's get through this example. The work is what I want is to cook through these books. What I'll do is I'll cook one recipe from the cookbook. The work I'll do is I will document my progress through photos and posts on Instagram. I'm not telling you guys that I am going to do this, although I very well might, but I'm just giving you an example. That's work. Another work I could write down that I will do is I will use cookbook A, cookbook B, and cookbook C. So I would specify. Being specific is important when you're writing down your goals and your plans. This is where a lot of people will start, and they'll be too general and not specific. There'll be no identity work. There'll be no concept of how they did last year, no recognition of patterns. They'll just start writing things down on a piece of paper. I'm going to just go to the gym in 2025. And then you wonder why by January 18th, you are not at the gym, boo-boo. You got to be specific. I have to be specific with me, and being specific has changed everything. So I've already established I'm going to cook through that book, and that book, one recipe a week, alternating each book, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and document my progress on Instagram through photos and whatever. That's an example of the work I'm going to do. Boundaries around it. I will prep and schedule the cooking times in advance. I will have identified a 2-hour block every week specifically for cooking. I will prep the ingredients X days before that. Yeah, that's a boundary around it. I'll do it. I don't leave it up to chance. I don't flop all over the place and then boohoo because I didn't get to it. I prioritize this thing that is important to me, that has brought me joy, and that I decide I want to do. Yeah. Boundaries around it. I will not skip a week. What I'm going to do is actually going to alternate. So this book specifically, and most of them, they come in sections. So the first section is beverages, and it has like chicken dishes and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to save the beverages for when I need a slow week, because the beverages are just pouring things together, right? And they're a lot easier. So I did a beverage yesterday for Thanksgiving, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the more complex recipes, which none of them are super complex, if I'm being honest. All these books have really simple recipes. I'm not going to be flambeing anything. I am not a flambe. Okay. I'm not a flambeer. But I'm going to use the simple beverage recipes in these books for the weeks when I need a little reprieve, right? I already have that. So there you go. There's a will. I will not use a lack of a specific ingredient as an excuse, right? Because just people look for all kind of reasons to be like, I'm not doing it. I can't find, girl, I don't know. I can't find Crown Royal infused radishes. Boo-hoo me. Listen, I'm gonna just substitute and keep going. Okay. I'm just gonna do it. And I will not make it too complicated. Yeah. And then the last thing that I always do is I make sure that I have a when. It has to be a time component on it, or else it's not gonna get done for me. So once I say I'm gonna do one recipe from the cookbooks, and which cookbook, and I'm gonna document it, and I'm gonna this and I'm gonna that, and I'm gonna shimmy, shimmy, pop, 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 I say each week. And I write these things down, you guys. So when I'm done with this, I have a list based off of who I am, what happened last year, and what I actually want to interject and create from this year, ejecting things that didn't work and that I don't want, and prioritizing, elevating, and interjecting things that did work and that I do want to create, with specific things that can happen to make that happen. Okay? I have a list. I have a master list that's about to create the Roshini that she about to be in 2025. Yes? Yes. The next thing that I do that's super important, because you don't just stop there. Because why would you stop there? Okay. A lot of people like to do work and act like they did a thing, but they get the dopamine hit from doing the planning, but they don't actually do the work. If you're a Christian, the Bible says faith without works is dead. That's dead faith. Frothing yourself into a oblivion over a plan that you make that you don't execute. I mean, I would prefer for you to write one thing down and knock it out the park in 2025 than to write 25 things. I've learned over the years, don't heavily weight this thing with 27 things, because at the end of the year, I'm not going to do 27 things and then I'm going to beat myself up. And I do this every year. And so now that I realize that everything has a time and a season, I could put a hot 5 and a possible priority things that I'm going to really show up and get done every year, knowing that next year something else will have its time to shine. Okay. Hi, S. Marie. Hello. Okay. So the next thing I do that is super duper, 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 duper important, after I have this list and I'm just like, oh, once a week, for example, once a week, I'm going to do the cookbook thing or whatever. I sit down and I schedule it and put it on my calendar, right? For me, that's a digital calendar. If you have a written calendar, I would put it in there. If it's once a week, I pick the date and the time that I'm going to do this thing. I schedule it out. I pick maybe the prep time that I'm going to put in the order or go get the ingredient. I schedule it out. I put it in my task list. I sit down. If I'm going to, for example, let me think of something else that I could do. Business related. Let's say that I'm going to start doing public speaking or something, which I'm not. I have no intention of doing that. So don't take this as me telling you. I'm just making examples. And I want to have 4 public speaking things before, one each quarter. I would schedule out tasks that I would make more granular tasks. I would schedule them out, and then I would make more granular tasks for when I want, like I would backtrack. Sorry, I'm trying to get my words together. How to actually make each of those things happen once a quarter. Right? If there are big events that are going to happen in my life, I put those on my calendar now. So this is where I've taken this very unique list that I've come up with and I'm putting it onto my calendar or into my task list. Somebody's birthday, my birthday, a trip, uh, a concert I want to go to, a comedy show, a convention, a girl, I don't know, a meetup, your kid's birthday, whatever the big things are. I start calendaring and I put those things on my calendar. Are they all concrete and are they unmoving and not able to change? Of course not. But they are more likely to happen if I put them down and most importantly, I am now able to see visually how I can go about creating the year that I want. It's right in front of me. It makes it easier for me to say yes. It makes it easier for me to say no. If so and so come to me and say, "Hey girl, do you want to come and become, I don't know, do you want to go to hair school with me and become a master crochet braider?" I could look at my calendar and be like, that is unimportant to me. And I can thank them very much for thinking about me. I could even put it down for something that I'm going to do a year or two from now. And I could say, thank you for thinking about me. That sounds amazing. I would love to do that, but I can't because my calendar is super full and I have some really priority things that excite me and bring me joy that I'm focused on in 2025. It just becomes you become a compass. You don't start, you know, all of a sudden you're planning the churches, Lord knows what, and your mama got you doing this, and all your time is taken up, and you get to the end of your year and you haven't done anything that reflects you. Okay, so calendaring is super important. And then the next thing I wrote down on how I plan my year, and really the last things that I write down after I have this amazing plan based off of me and where I want to actually drive my year intentionally. I wanted to go in this direction intentionally, and I put it down on my calendar, knowing that things evolve and shake. And at the end of the year, I'm not going to have 100% success rate with this thing, but I promise you, I'm gonna have a higher success rate than if I didn't do all this stuff. I've been doing this for years, you guys. My experience is when I've been doing this, I have a higher success rate in creating the majority of these things than if I did not do this work. And that's why I do it every single year. I personally still do it every single year. Okay. I've actually developed the virtual planning retreat for other women to do it, but it's not like I'm putting the planning retreat out there and I'm gonna let my life get jacked up. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. May the odds ever be in your favor, boo boo. So the last thing I do is I come up with my support system for how I'm going to actually execute this, which is accountability, right? So now that I have this beautiful plan, I have it on my calendar. Some of us are self accountable in a way that is admirable and beautiful, and some of us need a little help. And so that could look like accountability calls. That could look like working with a coach. That could look like finding an accountability partner, a friend, a whoever who wants to do for example, the recipes with you, or a business partner who also wants to become a public speaker, or whatever the things are on your list. That could look like partnering with your neighbor. If you want to keep your lawn more beautiful this year, you go over and you partner with your neighbor, and both of you guys come up with a plan to share, girl, I don't know, buy a better lawnmower that you guys share. Like it looks like accountability. Introducing support and accountability into the plan makes it more likely to actually occur. And then the last thing that I actually do is every month I review my plan. So every month I personally pull up my plan, look at it, assess how I'm doing, and tweak if necessary, right? Tweak if necessary. I actually do this. You could do this however you want to. You could do it with paper if paper is your jam. You could do it digitally if digitally is your jam. Digitally has become my jam. I used to be a big paper girl, but now I'm like more digital in the space. And what I do is I have a monthly task that pops up with my plan bullet pointed out, the higher level version, not all the granular stuff. The granular stuff is in my calendar, but like high level bullet points, I will cook through the cookbooks. I have an MMOB project, cook through the cookbooks. And I sit there and I assess, how am I doing? If I'm slacking, I ask myself what I need to get back on track. Or I ask myself, is this plan realistic? Did I overdo it in it? Right? It is very possible at the beginning of the year for me to still, basically, you know how people say your eyes are bigger than your stomach? To make a plan that is not realistic, right? Especially as a mom of a son with special needs. You know, this year there were several things that got garaged, basically, like put to the side to be considered for this upcoming year because my son had a surgery that kept getting postponed and moved and postponed and moved. And so that's where understanding who you are and what your priorities are in life and how you want to show up is so important, because then when you open up your monthly review, like high level monthly review, and you think to yourself, I want to be a girly that travels to 4 countries this year, but you end up with a person who has a medical situation. If that is still super important to you, you will be like, okay, I can't do 4. I could do 2, but I'm not going to do none because it's a super high important thing for me. And the authentic version of me is a traveler. You know what I mean? That's why I do the identity work, because whenever you need it to evolve, you can shift and evolve based off of the compass, the unique individual compass that you designed for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to review these with you guys, and then I'm going to, let you know how you could do my own planning retreat with me and basically do this stuff guided and with me helping you. Okay. First thing I do is I look back at it. I reflect on what the previous year was like. The second thing I do is I learn myself. I assess who I am and who I want to become. And I use that information to create a mission that is a compass for moving forward to design the plan. The third thing I do is I define what it looks like for things to go well for me, what I consider to be a successful year. And I spend some time in aspiration, in dreams, thinking about possibilities, thinking about potential, going bigger than I wanted even can, ask, think, or imagine, so that I have something to aim at real high. So even if I fall lower, I still get something amazing. And then the fourth thing I do is then I sit down after that and I actually come up with the goals I want and the plan. And those goals and those plans involve what I want, what I'm going to do to get what I want, the yeses and the nos around it, and when it's going to happen. And then after I do all that, I got a nice, pretty plan. I spend time calendaring, put that stuff on my calendar, and then I make sure that I have support systems in place to make it happen. And I sit down every month and I review it to make sure that I'm on course. And that, boo boo, is how I plan my year. So if you are a person who is like, girl, what? First of all, if you're a person who's just like, bet, watch me work, go for it, boo boo. Because if somebody had told me this, if somebody had done this video for me back when I was just going into the hotel room, spinning around in a circle like a chicken with his head cut off, I would have been like, oh my God, this is life changing. I've never thought of this. This is something that I've come up with over years. I'm not saying it works for everyone. I'm saying it has worked for me and I've seen it work for other women that I've shared it with. Okay. It just serendipitously, with synchronicity, God was like, this is, you're going to share it with other people. And I did. So if you are a person that is like, I would love to work with you to do that in the upcoming year, guess what? You're in luck, because I told you, I have a virtual planning retreat that I lead for Black women, Black and West Indian women every single year. This year, I am doing it in December with a week-long virtual planning retreat with 4 live Q&A calls during the planning week, so that you can actually get help from me and the other women involved. We can all talk if you need a person to immerse you and help you come up with your plan. And this year, I'm actually including monthly accountability calls. I had them separate last year. That's not the best outcome. So once again, things can evolve. This year, when you sign up for the planning retreat, you get the week's worth of course videos, audios for Zoom calls with me and the other planning retreat participants. You get downloadable worksheets. You get more detail on how to do what I just went through, like all the detail. I walk you through it. I walk you through it. If you do what I tell you to do in the planning retreat, when you come out, you're going to literally have a plan for your next year based off of who you are. And you're going to be like, what in the world? I've never thought about this before. You're welcome. Anyway, and after that, the December planning retreat participants get a monthly group accountability call starting in January and ending in October of 2025. I am also going to do offer the planning retreat again in January. However, the January planning retreat does not have any live assistance from me during the planning stage. So when you do the January planning retreat, you're on your own basically until the accountability calls. And then you can join the accountability calls, but that's not where I'm going to be helping you structure your plan. You're going to be working your plan at that point. From January, you're going to get February to October. If you are interested in enrolling, and what did you say, Blue Isis? I can honestly say when I have worked the planning retreat, I met 95% of my goals I set forth. Listen, me as well. I actually, when I do my monthly review, and like I said, I've been doing this for so many years. I take things off of the high end list. This is how I do it. You don't have to do it this way. When I review my plan and say, like, am I on track? When I do really well, I take, or it's done in my mind, or I've done it, I take it off the list. Or if I've decided I'm going to garage it for whatever reasons. I told you 2024, there was a lot of things being put over to the side because of my son's surgery. And I was okay with that. The list just, the past few months, I've been opening that list and I've been like, done, 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 done. And then I just go, like, literally, I'm hitting the mark so much with what I said I was going to create that it's not even that big of a deal. I open the list and I'm like doing that, doing that, doing that, doing that. And then I go about my business because I've already set it up. I've set myself up for literal success. And because I keep doing this retreat over and over and over, I keep seeing my life become what I said I wanted it to be. If you are interested in doing the planner retreat, the link should be at the top of the information box or in the comment section on whatever platform you are looking at. If not, visit thepineapplecrowns.com and you can enroll in the planning retreat. The price typically goes up every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, but because Thanksgiving tried to take me out, that would be an hour from now. And so I actually put an extension. The price goes up tomorrow, Saturday, November the 30th at, when did I do it? Noon, noon Central Standard Time. Second, you guys. That's what happens when you host people at your house and you're going in and out with no coat on and it's cold outside. Okay. Me, 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 me. So if you're interested in doing the planner retreat, grab it now. You get the week of immersive planning and coaching during that first week. And then you get a year of accountability calls. And the price will go up tomorrow at noon. Okay. 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 I think I have 6 or 7 Black women signed up right now. And I believe I'm going to, I don't know how many I have. I should check. Let me know. Listen, I think if that's the number I have, then that means I'm going to keep it open for at least 9 more women. So I'm going to keep the space open for at least 9 more women, because the reason for that, you guys, is because unlike last year, I've done the accountability calls with the women. And so I don't want the accountability calls. I want the women to win. And every woman that did the accountability calls with me all the way through, that signed up and finished all the way through January to October, had rave reviews and said she would have never gotten this far in her days and with her plan if she had not signed up for the accountability calls. And they have already signed back up because they see the value in it. I don't want the accountability calls to be too full. So I'm actually going to put a cap on the number of women that can sign up. So I think I probably have like 8 or 9 more spaces. So if you're interested, absolutely click the link, come and join me. If you aren't able to do it, go back, take notes on what I wrote, and Black woman, create the most incredible year because you deserve it and you can do it. And ain't nobody gonna check for you like you gonna check for you. Okay. And we are checking for you too because we love you. And that's it, you guys. Be well, be encouraged. Guess what I'm about to do? About to go downstairs and pull this leftovers out the refrigerator. Okay. And work it out, okay? Because I left space in my stomach for such a time as this. I don't know how long y'all do Thanksgiving leftovers, but I have a few days in me. Not a lot, but I got a couple three. I can make it through the weekend on these leftovers, okay? And I'm excited about it. Be well, you guys. Be encouraged. Here's a pineapple. Bye. Bye, y'all.